KirTop here, and these are 100 most incredible cases in archaeology. A box with relics of Polish monarchs. This elegant box with the inscription Izabela Czartoryska is not just an antique but a symbol of Polish history. In 1800, Princess Izabela Czartoryska collected a unique collection of relics related to Polish kings and great historical events in it. In total, the box contained 73 items, from personal belongings of monarchs to fragments of weapons and clothing symbolizing the national heritage and the spirit of resistance. Izabela considered it her mission to preserve Polish identity during the difficult times of partitions. Her box became part of the first museum in Poland, the Temple of Sibyl, created in Puławy, where she invited guests to remind them of the glory of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Unfortunately, like many national treasures, the box did not escape a tragic fate. In 1939, during the Nazi invasion of Poland, it was looted, and some relics are still considered lost. Trilingual cuneiform. Here is the inscription of Xerxes I, one of the great Persian kings who reigned in the 5th century BC. The inscription is carved into a smooth section of rock 20 meters above the ground, making it difficult to access and giving it a special grandeur. It is located near Lake Van in modern-day Turkey and is part of the ancient fortress of Van. The inscription is unique in that it is written in 3 languages: Old Persian, Elamite, and Akkadian, which was typical for Persian kings who sought to demonstrate their power over many nations. Xerxes I, famous for his campaigns against the Greeks and mentioned in Greek history, used such inscriptions to assert his power and grandeur. Each symbol here was carved with great precision, and cuneiform was used to convey an official message. The height and complexity of the inscription also indicates the power of the Persian king and was made to be visible to everyone who passed by. Sword of Islam. This sword, known as the Sword of Islam, was created as a symbolic ceremonial weapon and presented to Benito Mussolini in 1937 in Tripoli. The purpose was to demonstrate the support for his regime from the Muslims in Libya, then under Italian control. Mussolini readily accepted the gift and even used it in propaganda, presenting himself as the defender of Islam, an attempt to strengthen Italian influence in North Africa and the Middle East. The sword was luxuriously decorated. Inlays, intricate engravings, and oriental motifs emphasized its status not as a weapon, but as a political symbol. However, the fate of this sword was dramatic. In July 1943, when Mussolini's residence in Rocca delle Caminate was destroyed and looted by the Italian resistance, the sword disappeared without a trace. It is still unknown whether it was destroyed, hidden, or taken away. The Sword of Islam has gone down in history as a rare example of how a weapon can be used not for war, but as an instrument of ideology, and as an artifact that disappeared with the fall of the regime that tried to use it to consolidate its hold on power. 10,000-year-old chewing gum. 10,000 years ago in what is now Sweden, a group of teenagers chewed birch tar, similar to children chewing gum today. They could not even imagine that in the future, scientists would analyze their chewing remains and find out many interesting facts about their diet, lifestyle, and even health. 3 pieces of birch pitch used as glue in the Stone Age were found in the 1990s at a site called Huseby Cleve. Microbial DNA analysis of the resin showed high levels of bacteria associated with gum disease, such as Treponema denticola and Streptococcus aeruginosus. The study of these samples showed that the ancient teenagers suffered from caries and periodontal disease and also ate deer, trout, hazelnuts, and processed fox and wolf fur. Scientists have also found traces of birds and other animals, indicating their use as food and the processing of bones into tools. Traces of mistletoe were found in the gums of the specimens, suggesting the plant's possible use in medicine or as a poison for arrowheads. The discovery provides a unique insight into the lives of hunter-gatherers on the west coast of Scandinavia 9,700 years ago, allowing us to learn about their diet and dental problems. And we are only talking about very old chewing gum that children chewed. And thanks to modern technologies, they can already tell so much about the lifestyle of people who lived 12,000 years ago. Wooden sculpture of Christ. In the Belarusian village of Nesutici, in the dilapidated chapel of the Church of the Holy Archangel Michael, restorers have discovered a wooden sculpture of the crucified Christ. The find is more than 250 years old, and experts call it a real miracle. For so many years, it has remained practically undamaged. Research has shown that the sculpture was carved from pear wood, presumably in the 17th century. The exact origin is still unknown, but there are versions that it could have been made in Italy or Prussia. Such finds are rare. They remind us how many secrets can still be kept even in forgotten corners. A find in a hard-to-reach cave. This bronze dagger with a bone handle is a Bronze Age artifact found in Malta in a nearly inaccessible cave beneath the Dingley Cliff. It dates back to around 2000 BC and belongs to the Borg in Nadur phase when Malta had an advanced Bronze Age culture. However, it is still unknown why the ancient inhabitants chose this remote cave to deposit their artifacts. Perhaps the site had special significance or ritual value. The dagger's handle is decorated with circular patterns, which is both eye-catching and questionable. This motif is reminiscent of some elements of Mycenaean Greek art, which may indicate cultural influence or trade links. Interestingly, Mycenaean pottery shards were also found in the Bronze Age village where the dagger was discovered. Why was the dagger left in this cave? Was it part of a ritual or a symbol of special status? We can only guess, but every detail, from the green patina on the blade to the mysterious circles on the handle, makes us think about the life and worldview of the ancient Maltese and possible connections with the Mycenaean Greeks. Mysterious clay balls. In Turkmenistan, in the Karakum Desert, archaeologists have begun excavations of the ancient city of Gonurdepe again, and found something very unusual. After a 3-year break caused by the pandemic, scientists have returned to studying this important monument of the Bronze Age. Gonurdepe is the ancient center of the mysterious country of Margiana, which existed about 4,000 years ago. One of the most unexpected finds were clay balls with pieces of ceramic stuck into them. The balls were arranged in a certain order and apparently were used in rituals. Nothing like this had been found here before. Strange cone-shaped objects made of glazed minerals were also discovered. Perhaps they also had ritual significance or were used for fortune-telling. It is interesting that similar objects were found over a vast territory, from the Gulf of Oman to India and even in Western Turkey. This confirms the theory of the existence of a Central Asian sphere of interaction, when different cultures actively exchanged knowledge, traditions, and technologies. Mystical stones of Jalisco. Piedras grabadas de Ojuelos de Jalisco are mysterious stones found in the Mexican state of Jalisco, carved with strange figures, scenes, and symbols. These stones have attracted the attention of researchers and UFO enthusiasts due to images that some believe indicate ancient civilizations had contact with extraterrestrial beings. The stones depict people interacting with alien-like figures as well as objects similar to modern ideas about UFOs. Proponents of the paleo-contact theory argue that these stones may be important evidence that ancient Jalisco cultures did encounter extraterrestrial beings, or at least perceive such contacts in their myths and legends. Despite their controversy and lack of scientific evidence, the stones continue to attract interest as a possible artifact that reflects the interaction of mythology and reality in ancient cultures. They still fascinate antiquarians, raising questions about the extent to which our ancestors could perceive or interpret unusual phenomena. 2,500-year-old helmet in Dacian treasures. This golden helmet is one of the most famous artifacts of the Dacian culture, dating back to around 450 BC. Known as the Kotophanesti helmet, it is considered not only a work of ancient jewelry but also a symbol of power and ritual strength. Decorated with eyes, snakes, and mythological scenes, it may have belonged to a priest or chieftain who played a sacred role in Dacian society. The helmet seems to look at enemies, instilling fear and protecting the owner. On January 25, 2025, this helmet became the victim of a daring robbery. Several unique exhibits were stolen from the Drenthe Museum in Assen, Netherlands, where the exhibition Dacia, Land of Gold and Silver was taking place. Among them were this helmet and 3 royal Dacian bracelets. All the items came from the National History Museum of Romania. The loss of these artifacts was a real blow to the cultural heritage. The oldest mineral on Earth. In 2001, a unique zircon crystal was discovered in Australia, which is recognized as the oldest mineral on Earth. Its age is an impressive 4.4 billion years, which makes it a witness to the earliest stages of the formation of our planet. This tiny crystal gives scientists the opportunity to understand how the Earth cooled and formed in its first billion years. Today, this rare artifact can be seen in the Geological Museum of the University of Wisconsin in Madison, USA. Zirconium is interesting not only for its age, but also because its resistance to destruction allows it to preserve information about ancient processes that took place on Earth, which makes it a real keeper of the history of our planet. Metal door inside the rock. Since the beginning of the 21st century, numerous stories and rumors have surrounded the construction of the Baikal-Amur mainline in Russia, some of which surprisingly have a basis in reality. During active work on this railway line, workers encountered anomalies and paranormal phenomena, causing many to call the line ghost. Among the stories, a special place is occupied by stories about the ghost of the railway, a train passing by without a sound, which was witnessed by both builders and local residents. Scientists believe the origins of these stories may be linked to events in the 1940s when prisoners hijacked a steam locomotive during an uprising in an escape attempt. The BAM tunnels were not spared from mysteries, in particular the Severomoisky tunnel, the construction of which took more than 25 years due to unexpected surprises that posed new challenges for the builders. The mysteries associated with these structures, including stories of a white shaman who foreshadows disasters, only enhance the aura of mysticism around the highway. At every step, builders faced new obstacles that required immediate solutions. One of the most intriguing moments was the discovery of a metal door in one of the sections of the tunnel after the breakthrough of an underground spring, which led to the death of 30 people. The door, which became a real mystery, remained an unsolved secret, as did the strange sounds coming from underground, reminiscent of knocking. Attempts to explain these phenomena range from speculation about high concentrations of radon gas, which can cause audio hallucinations, to stories of evil spirits living in the depths of the tunnel. Additional intrigue is brought by the Devil's Bridge, part of the same highway, famous for its secrets and myths. Despite all the technical and mystical difficulties, the Severomoisky Tunnel and the Devil's Bridge remain the most important structures of the BAM, and the stories associated with them continue to excite the minds of both specialists and travelers. Answers to many questions have not yet been found, and each new riddle only deepens the mystery of these places. What the largest ship of antiquity looked like. The need for huge warships appeared in mankind long before steam engines and steel hulls. Already thousands of years ago, the fleet was considered the most important instrument of influence and domination. Through it, borders were strengthened, territories were conquered, and key resources were gained. It is believed that the foundation of ancient military shipbuilding was laid by the Diadochi, the successors of Alexander the Great. It was they who first began to build real military giants, such as Polyares and Tessaraconters, comparable in scale to modern battleships. One of the most impressive ships of antiquity was the Egyptian Tessaraconter, built in the 3rd century BC by order of King Ptolemy IV Philopator. It was a real floating fortress 130 meters long and 22 meters high. The ship accommodated about 4,000 rowers, not counting the crew, marines, and supplies. The name Tessaracontera translates as 40 row, according to the number of rows of oars. The exact number of oars is controversial. Researchers cite figures from 300 to 600. According to surviving descriptions, the ship had powerful weapons, a ram, catapults, and battle towers, and outwardly resembled a mobile fortress. Its sides were decorated with wooden carved vines, crocodiles, and other mythical creatures were painted on the stern, and the bow was crowned with a 5-meter figure of Aeolus, the Lord of the Winds. Inside there were halls, statues, even libraries, and according to some sources, stables. All this spoke more about status than about practical military necessity. Tessaracontera was more a symbol of power than an effective ship. Due to its size, it did not have full maneuverability and could not even go to sea on its own. It was towed by rowboats. Nevertheless, its very existence was an engineering breakthrough. The Egyptian Tessaracontera is not just an archaic ship, but a shining example of how ancient technology could reach incredible scales. Yes, it did not become a battle legend, but it certainly went down in history as one of the most ambitious naval projects of its time. Mantis helmet. Before you is a samurai helmet from the Edo period made in the 17th century in Japan. This helmet, unique and spectacular, is decorated with a figure of a praying mantis, an insect that symbolized fortitude, speed, and strength. In Japanese culture, the praying mantis is considered a symbol of vigilance and the ability to wait for the right moment to attack. These qualities were highly valued in the samurai tradition, so the image of a praying mantis on a helmet indicates the ideal features of a warrior. Helmets of this era were often decorated with complex and sometimes extravagant elements that emphasized the individuality and social status of the warrior. This helmet was not just protection, but also a means of self-expression that instilled fear in enemies. Made with high precision and decorated with gold elements, it reflects not only the strength but also the aesthetic values of the samurai of the Edo period. Ruins of Shanghai. In 1984, near the village of Shanghai in Beijing, archaeologists discovered fragments of pottery. These fragments accidentally led researchers to the ruins of Shanghai and other rare relics that belonged to the Neolithic culture of the ancient city. In this place, 7,000 years ago, there was an ancient Chinese civilization. During the Neolithic period, this civilization had a high skill in the production of clay products. From clay, they created a huge number of figurines and sculptures dedicated to animals. The researchers suggest that the animal figurines were created for ritual events. Archaeologists believe that stone beads were used for calculations. Scientists noticed that the ancient Shanghai people were very scrupulous in applying ornaments and drawings to the dishes. First, they carefully took measurements, took into account the aspect ratio and shape of the pottery, after which they applied markings, and then they cut out their drawing. They had knowledge in mathematics, especially in geometry. Today, anyone can visit the Shanghai Cultural Exhibition Center, where more than 200 relics of this culture are exhibited. In addition to pottery, visitors can see spoons and cups, household items, furniture, and clothes in the museum. Ancient Roman cellar in Germany. In March 2023, archaeologists in Frankfurt am Main made a truly sensational find. During excavations in the historic district of Hetternheim, researchers came across a uniquely preserved fragment of a Roman house, a wooden staircase leading to a cellar almost 2,000 years old. This seems incredible because wood rarely survives for so long, especially in an urban environment. Hetternheim is a district with a rich history. Once upon a time, the ancient Roman city of Nida, founded during the reign of Emperor Augustus, was located here. Later, in 110 AD, Emperor Trajan made it the capital of the Civitas Taunensium region. The city flourished. The population reached 10,000 people. But already in the 3rd century, due to attacks by Germanic tribes, it began to decline and was finally abandoned. In the 20th century, traces of Nida almost completely disappeared. Old houses were dismantled, basements were destroyed during construction. Therefore, the discovery of a wooden staircase and floor in a Roman basement is a real miracle. The object was in excellent condition, and archaeologists decided to preserve it. Nomaly figures. One of the most mysterious artifacts of the African continent is the nomaly figures found in Sierra Leone, West Africa. These ancient sculptures, carved from stone, depict strange creatures with disproportionately large heads, bulging eyes, and other unusual features that are not typical of human anatomy. Some of them also depict scenes that can be interpreted as mythological or religious. The unique shapes and features of these figures have attracted the attention of not only archaeologists, but also supporters of theories about ancient astronauts. Some researchers believe that the nomaly figures may represent images of extraterrestrial beings that may have been in contact with the ancient inhabitants of the region. According to them, the strange proportions and features of the figures may indicate that they were created under the impression of real creatures of extraterrestrial origin. This theory, although not scientifically proven, adds an aura of mystery to the nomaly figurines and attracts the attention of ufologists and lovers of mysticism. Official science considers the nomaly figurines to be religious or ritual objects, and it is believed that these artifacts were most likely used in ancient rites or rituals associated with the worship of gods or spirits, since they could symbolize certain mythological characters. As I have already told you before, when archaeologists or historians cannot explain the origin of an artifact, it necessarily becomes an object of religious significance. Interestingly, the nomaly figurines are often found deep in the ground, sometimes together with other ancient artifacts, various iron objects or weapons, which complicates the task of dating them and establishing their cultural context. Some finds indicate that these artifacts could have existed in very ancient times, perhaps long before the appearance of known civilizations in this region. The results shocked scientists. The story of the mummy, which had been kept in Warsaw University for many years and was shrouded in mystery, has finally found a logical explanation. Previously, it was believed that this was a man, a priest named Jehuti, who lived in the 1st century BC. However, in 2015, Polish researchers decided to conduct a CT scan and discovered that it was a woman. Moreover, scientists thought that she was pregnant at the time of her death. The images allegedly showed fetal bones, a small arm, a leg. This aroused great interest in the scientific world. After all, this could be the first pregnant mummy ever discovered. Moreover, deformations were noticed on the skull of the mysterious lady, and researchers suggested that the cause of death could be aggressive cancer. However, over time, doubts began to appear. Radiologist Sahar Salim from Cairo immediately noticed that there was no anatomical evidence of the fetus and asked a logical question. Why did the bones disappear but the soft tissues of the child were preserved? Recently, archaeologist Kamila Brolinska and her colleagues returned to the case and reanalyzed more than 1,400 CT images. 4 independent groups worked, and all came to the same conclusion: there was no pregnancy. The so-called fetus turned out to be tissue clots left behind due to irregularities in the mummification process. The same applies to the alleged cancer. The skull was damaged during brain extraction, which is not uncommon with careless embalming. So the mysterious lady remains a mystery once again, but this time without sensational headlines. This story shows how important it is to double-check even the most sensational scientific discoveries. Cotton 7,000 years old. I often draw your attention to the fact that the development of modern digital technologies greatly helps archaeologists to see what was previously impossible. It is unfortunate that by this time, many archaeological finds had already disappeared without a trace. But scientists can study in more detail those findings that still remain. So Israeli archaeologists have discovered the oldest traces of cotton in the Middle East. They claim that the textiles that have lain in the ground are 7,000 years old. Of course, nothing was left of the products for such a time, only grains, according to which the scientists drew their conclusions. The discovery was made at the archaeological site of Tel Safa, which is located in the central Jordan Valley. In addition to the microscopic remains of cotton, many important discoveries have been made here. For example, the earliest known facts of public drinking of beer come from this place. In simple terms, one of the first pubs appeared here, and the technology of ritual food storage is also from here. Previously, micro remains of clothes made of linen, hair, and wool were found in this place, but cotton for this region was not native. This can only mean one thing. Tel Safa was an important trading center in ancient times, and in Egypt, archaeologists have found an equally important royal tomb. Crown. The oldest crown found to date was discovered in the Nahal Mishmara hoard in 1961 in the Judean desert near the Dead Sea. This amazing hoard included more than 400 objects dating back to the Copper Age. The crown, made of blackened copper, has a diameter of about 18 centimeters, and its upper edge is decorated with 5 figures. Among them are 2 long-necked birds, presumably vultures, stylized doors or gates, and a T-shaped object which may symbolize the hilt of a sword. Along with the crown, a scepter with images of horned animals, a copper wicker basket, and many ceramic vessels and bowls were found in the hoard. Despite the majestic appearance of the crown, scientists do not believe that it was worn by a ruler. Most likely, it was used in ritual ceremonies or funeral rites. It remains a mystery how these treasures could have been kept in a cave for thousands of years. And this crown can be considered the first crown in the form we are accustomed to. Diamond drills 2,000 years ago. Scientists have made an amazing discovery. Ancient craftsmen used diamond drills to process hard stones 2,000 years ago. This became clear after analyzing 51 beads found in a burial in Rabat on the territory of modern Uzbekistan. The burial dates back to the 2nd century BC, 1st century AD, and is associated with the Yuezhi culture, which existed in historical Bactria. The beads were made of carnelian, agate, and garnet, stones that are difficult to process even with modern tools. An electron microscope study showed that 41 beads have traces characteristic of diamond drilling. Moreover, the craftsman most likely first used a single drill to start the hole and then switched to a more complex tool with 2 diamond points. Previously, it was believed that the diamond drilling technique originated in the Indus civilization in the area of modern India and Pakistan, but now it is becoming clear. Similar technologies developed independently in different parts of Asia. Interestingly, although such methods are found in Tanzania, Uzbek beads are made using a special technique that has not been found anywhere else. Unknown building from prehistoric times. In France, archaeologists discovered a unique ancient structure consisting of 3 round structures, which still remain a mystery to scientists. The find was made in Marliens, near Dijon, before the expansion of a local quarry. The work was carried out under the auspices of the French National Institute for Preventive Archaeological Research. The artifacts cover the period from the Neolithic to the early Iron Age over an area of 60,000 square meters. A monument with 3 fences was also discovered, the central one having the shape of a horseshoe. Scientists suggest that this structure may have been used during the Neolithic period, which began about 7,000 years ago. Radiocarbon dating is underway to confirm the date. Artifacts related to the bell beaker culture, including flint arrowheads and a copper dagger, were found near the structure. One of the armbands contained pyrite used to start a fire, indicating a possible burial site, although this hypothesis has not yet been confirmed. In addition, a 5-chamber burial dating to 1500 to 1300 BC was found, including a burial hearth and an amber necklace. At a distance of 400 meters from the main find, the ashes of Iron Age cremations containing jewelry were discovered. Not a biblical miracle. The famous biblical miracle of Moses allegedly parting the Red Sea to get the Israelites through was long considered a supernatural intervention. However, modern scientists offer a much more earthly explanation, and it is no less impressive. A new study has shown that about 3,500 years ago, weather and geographic conditions could well have created the effect described in the Old Testament. Scientists from the U.S. National Center for Atmospheric Research have used a computer model to prove that with a wind speed of about 100 kilometers per h blowing in the right direction, the water could have temporarily retreated, revealing land up to 5 kilometers wide, and then just as abruptly returned as a tsunami wave. The biblical description says that the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all the night. The researchers are sure that the wind is the key to the mystery. The crossing point is now more often considered to be not the deep Gulf of Aqaba, but the shallower and smoother Gulf of Suez, where such a phenomenon would be possible. It is also there that Napoleon is known to have led his army through shallow waters during low tide in 1789, but almost drowned on the way back. There are other hypotheses. For example, the crossing could have been not through the Red Sea, but through Lake Tanis, the so-called Reed Sea mentioned in the original Hebrew. Or the water could have retreated due to an earthquake and tsunami, as happens in modern disasters when a wave pulls water far from the shore. One way or another, the solution to the ancient miracle may not be in violating the laws of nature, but in the ability to accurately calculate the time, place, and believe. No one to eat corpses. The Zoroastrian Tower of Silence on Malabar Hill, a sacred site for the Parsi community, is under threat due to the dwindling vulture population in the area. The birds play a key role in the ritual of Domination, the uncovering of the bodies of the dead so they can be returned to nature. However, a rapid decline in the number of scavengers in Mumbai since 2015 has put this ancient tradition at risk. The Tower of Silence, or Dakma, which is over 300 years old, is a circular structure that symbolizes eternity in the Zoroastrian faith. It is located in a 22-hectare forest. The outer circle of the tower is for men, the middle one for women, and the inner one for children. Before the body is placed in the dakma, loved ones pray in special structures called bungalows, and the remains are then carried out by kandis, special caretakers. According to Zoroastrian traditions, contact with a dead body is considered desecration, and vultures play an important role in ensuring cleanliness and maintaining natural balance. But urbanization, habitat change, and environmental problems have led to a sharp decline in the number of these birds. The processes of decomposition of bodies have slowed down, which has created difficulties for performing the ritual. Human blood on ancient mask. A gold mask from the Sican culture found on the northern coast of Peru contains traces of human blood. The Sican culture, which existed from 750 to 1375 AD, is known for its luxurious gold crafts, including funerary masks that were created during the Middle Sican period and often accompanied the elite in their tombs. In the 1990s, archaeologists excavated the tomb of one such elite. It contained a skeleton sitting upside down, painted bright red with cinnabar, with a gold mask covering a severed skull. Around the skeleton were the skeletons of 2 young women in labor and nursing positions, as well as 2 children. In a recent study, scientists analyzed the paint on the mask, identifying 6 proteins from human blood, including serum albumin and immunoglobulin G. Proteins from egg white, presumably from a Muscovy duck, were also found. Researchers believe that the presence of blood symbolized life force and could be linked to the idea of rebirth of the deceased. A cache of gold treasures. In the French department of Dordogne, in the commune of Saint-André-d'Allah, workers unexpectedly stumbled upon a real treasure. Gold jewels, jewelry with diamonds and pearls, were hidden under an ancient stone wall. The find was made by members of the Périgord Pierre Sèche organization, which is engaged in the restoration of traditional structures built using the dry masonry method. Project manager Jean-Marc Audit said that during the excavation of the foundation, he noticed an unusual shine, and that's how they found jewelry entangled in the roots of an old tree. Among them are rings, brooches, hairpins, bracelets, inlaid with stones. Everything indicates that the treasure had been lying under the wall for more than a decade, if not a century. How, when, and why the jewelry ended up in this place remains a mystery. Now, the City Hall, together with the Prefecture and the Gendarmerie, is conducting an investigation and asking local residents to provide any known information related to the history of the jewelry. By law, treasure found on municipal land is divided equally between the finder and the owner of the land. The real existence of the biblical king Hezekiah. The only mention of King Hezekiah was previously only in the Bible. He is considered the 13th king of Judah from the dynasty of the House of David. A recent discovery by archaeologists indicates that this king actually existed. They found a mention of him on a stone artifact from the 8th century BC. A fragment of limestone with a mention of the king was found by archaeologists in a pile of garbage near an artificial pool in the Tunnel of Siloam. The discovery was made 10 years ago, and the discovery of this inscription took place a couple of days ago. As you can see, many finds have to be discussed several times. First, about how researchers find artifacts, and later, who they belong to and what their history is. On a clay fragment, scientists were able to decipher the text in ancient Hebrew. The inscription mentions and confirms the reality of King Hezekiah and his achievements, which were described in the Bible. This king was mentioned several times in stories related to the construction of pools and tunnels. Let me remind you that a piece of limestone was found in the pool. The inscription was incomplete and hard to read. Scholars have reconstructed it as Hezekiah made a pool in Jerusalem. The word bath is clearly preserved. This tablet may have been a monumental inscription on one of the public buildings. This find has 2 important discoveries. The first is that the Jewish kings left commemorative inscriptions about themselves just as the Eastern rulers did. It used to be thought that the ancient Jews did not do this. And the second important point proves that the Bible was written on the basis of Jewish historical documents. That is, these are not just inventions of preachers, but real stories, albeit slightly modified from the history of mankind. Milk tooth. Archaeologists from Novosibirsk made an important discovery at the Obashir site in the foothills of the Pamir Alay in Kyrgyzstan. They found about 5,000 ancient artifacts, including stone tools, jewelry, and a modern human tooth. Canadian anthropologist Bence Viola from the University of Toronto confirmed that this tooth belongs to Homo sapiens. Archaeologists compared the finds with earlier complexes in Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan studied back in Soviet times. These complexes, located in the Tian Shan and Pamir Mountains, showed striking similarities in the types and methods of processing stone tools. Before this find, it was believed that humans did not live in Central Asia from 20 to 10,000 years ago due to difficult climatic conditions. The found Homo sapiens tooth, dating back to the Mesolithic, was the first find of its kind in the region. The mythical gold mine. In 1929, Australia found its Indiana Jones, Lewis Harold Bell Lassiter. He claimed that 3 decades earlier he had discovered a huge gold reef in the heart of the continent. There was almost no evidence, but rumors of a missing Klondike excited prospectors and historians. In 1930, Lassiter managed to assemble an expedition and set off into the outback again. He was accompanied by a pilot, 2 prospectors, Aboriginal guides, and even a representative of the governor. However, Lassiter was sullen, confused in his stories, and reluctant to show the way. Having reached Mount Marjorie, he declared that they were lost. His companions considered him an imposter and left. Lassiter was left with only a hunter, but soon the hunter also abandoned him. As a result, Harold continued on his way alone. A year later, he was found dead in a cave. According to his diary, he died of exhaustion after spending his last months among the natives trying to survive. Meanwhile, the legend of the reef did not die out. Numerous prospectors combed the McDonnell Range in the hope of finding gold. The press discussed the mysterious Swede Olaf Johansson, who allegedly also knew the way to the treasure. Later, books and films appeared. Director Luke Walker in the project Lassiter's Bones found letters from Harold mentioning that same Olaf and hinting at the lost reef. Modern research has not confirmed large deposits in the designated area, although geologist Bill DeCarly came across a quartz layer reminiscent of Lassiter's description. He believes that Harold was just retelling other people's stories. Nevertheless, the mystery of the treasure continues to excite the minds of romantics and gold hunters. The Florentine Diamond. This sparkling stone is the legendary Florentine diamond, also known as the Austrian yellow. Weighing 137.45 carats, it was striking not only for its size, but also for its unusual yellowish hue. According to legend, the diamond first belonged to the influential Medici family and then ended up in the hands of the Habsburg dynasty, where it became part of the imperial regalia. For a long time, the Florentine was kept in the royal treasury in Vienna and was considered one of the most valuable stones in Europe. However, after the collapse of Austria-Hungary in 1918, its traces were lost. The stone was allegedly taken to South America, and according to rumors, it was subsequently split into several smaller diamonds to make it easier to sell and hide its origin. It is still unknown where the pieces of the Florentine are, if it was indeed split. Its history is shrouded in mystery and enigma, and the diamond itself has become a symbol of the lost splendor of European dynasties. Perhaps it still lies in some private safe waiting to be discovered again. Student discovers entire city. Mexican archaeologists have accidentally discovered an ancient Mayan city hidden in the jungles of Campeche. Tulane University research student Luke Old Thomas discovered the city called Valeriana while looking through LiDAR data. This method maps objects beneath vegetation, and Old Thomas was able to see what had previously eluded other experts. The city of Valeriana, with an area of about 16.6 square kilometers, is impressive in its structure. Pyramids, sports fields, amphitheaters, and roads connecting neighborhoods have been found here. Archaeologists believe that Valeriana was likely home to 30,000 to 50,000 people at its peak from 750 to 850 AD. The city is second in density only to the famous Calakmul. The urban layout reveals a complex structure. 2 large centers with temple pyramids connected by a network of roads and residential areas, as well as residences and ceremonial sites. Even traces of water tanks have been found, indicating a thoughtful use of natural resources. This discovery confirms that tropical forests were not places where civilizations go to die, but could support rich and complex cultures. Professor Marcello Canuto notes that the use of LiDAR technology in the last 10 years has accelerated the discovery of new Mayan cities that were previously unknown. What did the rich eat in ancient Rome? Ancient Rome was a powerful empire that greatly influenced the life of mankind. Even now, much of what has become commonplace for us came to us from ancient Rome. Concrete roads and highways, stitched books and plumbing, delivery service and newspapers, heated floors, and graffiti. But the Caesar salad, which almost every person on our planet knows about, has nothing to do with the Emperor Julius Caesar. The only thing is that this salad was invented by an Italian in 1903. So what did people eat in ancient Rome then, if they didn't have Caesar salad on the table? The Romans woke up early, at 6 a.m. Then they also had breakfast with bread with date fruits and honey, which they washed down with wine. Also for breakfast, they could eat up the food that remained after dinner and also drink wine. At about 11 a.m., they ate meat with bread and cheese. The most important meal was at lunchtime. The Romans had a three-course meal: eggs, shellfish, or meat with olives washed down with wine diluted with water. Honey was added to this drink as a sweetener. Then they served meat or fish. The Roman elite ate more exquisitely. They roasted a whole pig or an exotic bird, an ostrich or a peacock. Of course, not without fruits and nuts. Almost never a single meal was complete without their favorite garum sauce. They made it from small fish and fish waste, which were mixed with vinegar, salt, and wine. It was the most popular sauce in ancient Rome, and each region had its own recipe. As you already understood, wine in ancient Rome flowed like a river. It seems to me that if they had tea bags, then they would also brew tea and wine with the addition of honey. For dinner, the Romans often invited guests to their home with whom they could sit at the table for good 4 hours. And after the end of these gatherings, guests could take the rest of the food home with them. The owner of the house regarded this as a compliment. Before going to bed, they also had a meal. It was fruit with bread. From all of the above, we can conclude that the ancient Romans loved to eat and drink wine. And when they were engaged in the development of their state and the conquest of new lands, well, this is a whole different story. DNA of modern Japanese. Today, Japan attracts people from all over the world, but it was not always so. For 10,000 years, the archipelago remained isolated until the first migrants from the mainland began to arrive there. This was confirmed by genetic analysis of the remains of a man of the Yayoi era. The Japanese population has a dual origin, but the details of this mixing remained unclear for a long time. Scientists from the University of Tokyo, led by Jong-hyun Kim and Jun Ohashi, decided to look into the matter. According to their data, about 80% of the nuclear genome of modern Japanese people comes from people from East and Northeast Asia. There are two models that explain the genetic diversity of the Japanese. One assumes a single wave of migration during the Yayoi and Kofun periods, the other allows for several sources. Geneticists analyzed the genome of a man of the Yayoi era from the Doigahama Cemetery and compared it with ancient and modern populations. It turned out that the Yayoi and Kofun people are genetically closer to Koreans than modern Japanese, confirming the hypothesis of a single source of migration from the Korean peninsula. The oldest animal sculpture. On the coast of South Africa, 330 kilometers from Cape Town, scientists from Nelson Mandela University discovered the oldest artificial image of an animal created by man. This sculpture of a blue stingray, made from petrified sand, is located near Blombos Cave, famous for rock art dating back to 77,000 and 73,000 years ago. The study showed that the sculpture was created about 130,000 years ago during the Middle Paleolithic period. The special symmetry and engraved patterns indicate that this is the work of man and not a random creation of nature. This find makes it possible to trace the development of art among the ancient ancestors of man, showing the transition from the creation of abstract forms to realistic images of animals. Tomb of an unknown pharaoh. In Egypt, near the city of Abydos, archaeologists have found the tomb of a pharaoh that is about 3,600 years old. It is located at a depth of 7 meters in an ancient necropolis known as Mount Anubis. The tomb turned out to be almost empty. It was most likely plundered in ancient times. The name of the pharaoh was written on the plaster at the entrance but has not survived to this day. Scientists suggest that this could be one of the little-known rulers, for example, Sennaib or Pantjeni, who are mentioned in other sources, but their burials have not yet been found. The tomb dates back to the Second Intermediate Period, a difficult time in the history of Egypt, when the country was divided into several kingdoms and was in political chaos. One of these regional kingdoms was the Abydos dynasty, whose representatives could have been buried in this area. Interestingly, the new tomb is built into the complex of an earlier and more influential pharaoh, Neferhotep I, and is architecturally similar to both the tombs of the Middle Kingdom and later ones. Rock Crystal Reliquary. This reliquary, created in France between 1175 and 1200, is a work of art and religious craftsmanship. It is made of gold and silver and decorated with rock crystal, which adds transparency and lightness. The relics of saints or other valuable relics of great importance to believers could be kept inside. Such reliquaries often became objects of worship. They were exhibited in churches and monasteries where they attracted pilgrims from all over. The design of the reliquary itself is especially interesting. It is made in the form of a miniature building with decorative arches, columns, and small figures of saints, which symbolize the idea of a spiritual temple. The transparent cylinder of rock crystal allowed believers to see the contents, which strengthened their faith in the sanctity of the stored relics. How skates appeared. Figure skating is one of the most beautiful and spectacular sports. Interestingly, the history of this hobby began about 3,000 years ago, and the first skates looked a little different from what you are used to seeing now. The Dutch made this sport popular, and the Russians brought this sport to a completely different level. They say that the Cimmerians, a tribe of nomads who lived on the territory of the northern Black Sea region, were the first to use skates. As skates, they used pointed animal bones, which were tied to the leg with a rope. In the 13th century, there was a need for skates in the form of a vehicle for moving on ice. When the reservoirs froze and people needed to cross to the other side, they modernized the skates and made them from wood and metal. Thus, they became more reliable and could serve for a longer time. Skates came to Russia thanks to Peter the First after he visited Holland. However, he made changes. Now the skates were not fastened with ropes and straps, they were nailed to the soles of the shoes. In 1871, the first ever skating congress was organized, at which it was decided to recognize figure skating as an official sport. After 11 years, the first international competition took place, where the Russian figure skater Alexander Panshin, the first ever world champion in speed skating in the classic all-around, won. Thanks to the improvement in the shape of the skates which Alexander Panshin made, figure skating has reached another level. His skates allowed him to maneuver on the ice and perform complex tricks. After 8 years, the competition took place in St. Petersburg, Russia, and the next year in Hamburg, Germany. And after another 10 years, women began to participate in competitions. Until the Second World War, the Austrians were often the victors, and later the Americans and Canadians. Figure skating entered the Olympic Games in 1976. Television has made a great contribution to the development of this sport. Write in the comments under the video if you want to know briefly about the emergence of other sports. After all, every sports event has a certain long history. Skeleton Lake. Hundreds of human skeletons have been found at the bottom of Rupkund Lake in the Indian Himalayas, earning it the nickname Skeleton Lake. The skeletons vary widely in age, and it is still unclear how they all died. Previously, it was thought that they could have been the victims of a single disaster, such as a powerful storm that killed a large group of people. Recent research has only complicated the mystery. Scientists analyzed the DNA of 38 bodies found and found that the remains belonged to people from different eras, thousands of years apart. These people arrived at the lake at different times, disproving the theory that a single group died en masse. The research began a decade ago when geneticist Kumarasamy Thangaraj of the Indian Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology sequenced the mitochondrial DNA of 72 skeletons. Some were of Indian origin, but some of the remains belonged to people with DNA typical of Western Europeans, particularly Crete and Greece. Interestingly, the time range of these finds also turned out to be varied. Most of the bones date back to the 7th to 10th centuries AD, but among them there are also remains dating back to the 19th to 20th centuries. The causes of death of these people remain unclear, which adds to the mystery of this place. The Great Bell of Damazetti. The Great Bell of Damazetti is considered the largest bell ever made. It was cast in 1484 by order of the King of Myanmar Damazetti and installed on the famous Shwedagon Pagoda in Yangon, one of the most sacred places for Buddhists in the country. According to historical data, the weight of the bell exceeded 290 tons, which makes it a record holder among similar structures. However, the fate of the bell was tragic. In 1608, the Portuguese mercenary and adventurer Felipe de Brito captured Yangon and decided to take the bell to melt it down for weapons. While transporting it across the Bogo River, he miscalculated the weight of the structure. The bell capsized the barge and sank to the bottom. Since then, it has not been possible to find it despite numerous attempts. Today, the Great Bell of Damazetti remains part of the legends and national pride of Myanmar. Its story is a reminder of how culture, spirituality, and greed can be intertwined in one artifact, the fate of which remains a mystery to this day. Royal Tomb in Egypt. Luxor is one of the most ancient cities in the world. Until now, scientists disagree about when it was built. The ancient Egyptians called the city Waset, which means scepter. The Greeks called it Thebes, and the Romans Dios Polis Magna. When the Arabs conquered Egypt, the city received its last name, Luxor, which means the place of many palaces. When we learn about new finds from Egypt, we immediately understand that with a 90% probability, it will be either in Luxor or next to this city. An international team of archaeologists found the tomb at the base of a small rock with a staircase carved into it leading to a burial chamber. After thousands of years, the tomb notably collapsed and filled with sand. Even the inscriptions on the walls of the tomb were erased. Although whoever watches my videos constantly knows how the Egyptian authorities can hide part of the history of their state, so you should not trust archaeologists 100% either. Who was buried in this tomb, scientists do not yet know for sure. The tomb needs to be cleaned of sand, and in a few months, archaeologists will be able to tell who was buried there. Preliminarily, they are sure that one of the wives of the pharaoh's children, or a Thutmose princess, was buried there. Based on the items that were found, it can be concluded that the tomb belongs to the 18th dynasty of pharaohs Akhenaten and Tutankhamun. Kamoon sandals. This exquisite pair of sandals were found in the famous tomb of Pharaoh Tutankhamun and are now part of an Egyptian collection. These sandals are not just shoes, but a true work of art and a symbolic detail reflecting the worldview of the ancient Egyptians. They are made of wood and covered with intricate inlays made of bark, green leather, and gold foil. The images on the sandals show Egypt's enemies, the Nubians and Asians, bound together, symbolizing the pharaoh's triumph over his enemies. The sandals may have been used as part of a ceremonial wardrobe and had a special meaning. Imagine the pharaoh wearing such shoes as if trampling on his enemies, demonstrating his power and protection of Egypt. The inlay and detailing of the work is amazingly skillful, testifying to the high level of craftsmanship of the ancient Egyptian masters. For the pharaoh, such objects emphasized his status, his divine right to the throne, and his role as a protector of the nation. Mini Stonehenge. In the English county of Derbyshire, near the town of Matlock, archaeologists have discovered an ancient ceremonial complex from the Bronze Age, about 3,700 years old. This place turned out to be part of a large stone circle which had been hidden in the forest for a long time, and it all started with the curiosity of 24-year-old student George Bird, who became interested in a lonely stone standing in the forest near his home. The stone, known as the Farley Moor Standing Stone, is about 2 meters high and was previously considered a solitary monument. But on Bird's initiative, the researchers decided to carefully study the surrounding area. It turned out that the stone stands on top of a natural spring, the water from which flows into the Bentley Brook and further into the Derwent River. Traces of an ancient platform were found nearby, which was probably used for rituals long before the stone itself was installed. This suggests that the place was revered for centuries and was of great importance to Bronze Age communities, especially in connection with water. Archaeologists also found 5 more stones that had previously stood upright. Together they formed an oval circle about 25 meters wide. The discovery joins the list of 25 known Bronze Age stone circles found in the Peak District, a region rich in ancient monuments, and confirms that ritual life at the time was much broader than the famous Stonehenge. Discovery rewrites alcohol history. The process of distilling alcohol goes back much further than previously thought. New excavations at the tomb of Liu He, the 9th emperor of the Western Han Dynasty, have revealed that distillation was already known in China 2,000 years ago. Scientists have found a bronze vessel called a heavenly pot, which served as a key part of a wine distillation device. Previously, historical texts only pointed to the emergence of such technologies during the Yuan dynasty, that is, 1,000 years later. Despite his short reign, Liu He left behind an impressive legacy. In addition to the distiller itself, the oldest painting of Confucius was found in his tomb, as well as thousands of pieces of armor made of iron, copper, and lacquered leather. All this testifies to the high level of craftsmanship of the Western Han era. An experiment with a replica of the bronze vessel showed a distillation efficiency of over 70% while preserving the taste and aroma of the drink. Initially thought to have been used for perfume essences or medicine, it is now clear that its primary purpose was alcohol production. The findings provide insight into the evolution of brewing and alcohol practices, complementing historical records and revealing the potential of early Chinese inventors. The oldest fabric. Fabric is one of the oldest inventions of mankind, and its history goes back tens of thousands of years. One of the oldest finds is a fragment of fabric, the age of which is estimated at 34000 years. This amazing artifact was discovered in the Georgia Cave in Georgia. Its age indicates that even at that time, people knew how to make and use textiles. These ancient fragments of fabric were made from plant fibers that were twisted into threads and then woven. This technology was a major step in the development of human communities, since it made it possible to create not only clothing, but also various household items such as baskets, fishing nets, and tools for carrying loads. This find shows that the ability to work with fibers developed in people long before the advent of complex tools and technologies. The deepest ancient tunnel. In China, they want to reach Cretaceous rocks that are 140 million years old. The task is ambitious. It is planned to drill through 10 layers of earth and reach a depth of 11,000 meters, which will become a national record. Work started in May of this year. While Russia wants to resume work on the Kola super deep well, China is already drilling in full swing. Let me remind you that the Soviet Kola well project, although it was not completed, made important scientific discoveries and planned to drill the earth to a depth of more than 15,000 meters. Work on the Kola Peninsula began in 1970 and continued for 2 decades. At a depth of 7 kilometers, the team had to face difficulties. Layered rocks got stuck in the equipment. Despite this, the final depth of 12,226 meters was achieved, but the project had to be closed in 1990 due to an unknown explosion. Now, China is looking to further explore the Earth's interior and plans to use its new borehole to study earthquakes and predict their occurrence. The project also aims to gain a deeper understanding of the internal structure of the Earth and its evolution. This opens up new opportunities for the development of technologies and solutions applicable in different industries. Let's hope that China, having modern technologies, will be able to find something interesting for the world of archaeology. Metallic objects from Gaius. The La Mana caves in Ecuador have attracted the attention of not only archaeologists, but also fans of mysticism and ufology for many years. The story of the discovery of metal objects in these caves is shrouded in mystery and mysticism. According to legend, metal plates were discovered in La Mana with symbols engraved on them that resemble modern diagrams, maps, and even technical drawings. These findings became the basis for hypotheses about the existence of an unknown civilization in the distant past that possessed highly developed technologies, or about contacts between ancient people and extraterrestrial beings. Supporters of these theories argue that such complex and detailed symbols could not have been created with primitive tools and should indicate more advanced knowledge. Some researchers even suggest that the plates could have served as star maps or technological instructions left by aliens. However, most scientists are very skeptical about these findings. There is no conclusive evidence that the metal objects from La Mana are indeed ancient. Some experts point to possible traces of modern metalworking and the inconsistency of these artifacts with styles and technologies known in ancient Ecuador. Moreover, there is a lack of reliable dating and context for the objects, which further undermines their authenticity. Archaeologists believe that these artifacts may have been created in a later period, perhaps as part of a hoax or to attract tourists. Thus, despite the fascinating and mysterious story of the metal objects from the caves of La Mana, their origin and meaning remain in question. The story of the caves of La Mana is an example of how myths and legends can intertwine with reality, creating fascinating but often unreliable stories about our past. A girl was infected with a medieval curse. Do you think it is possible to literally be transported back to the Middle Ages in the modern world? And now we are not talking about a reenactors festival, but about a truly creepy phenomenon. In the Middle Ages, people suffered from a mysterious disease, St. Anthony's fire, also known as witch's cramps. The symptoms were horrific: convulsions, bloody vomiting, psychosis, and in severe cases, gangrene of the limbs. The infected were often considered to be possessed by demons. In fact, the cause was banal: poisoning with ergot, a parasitic fungus that affects rye. Bread from contaminated grain caused mass epidemics throughout Europe and even in Russia. The last major case was recorded in 1951 in France, when 250 people fell ill and 4 died. It seemed that the disease was a thing of the past, but recently an American girl felt a strong burning sensation in her legs. Doctors were perplexed. The tissues of her limbs began to die. Only after long studies, it was discovered that she had been poisoned by ergot, catching a real greeting from the Middle Ages. Modern technologies have almost eliminated such cases, but as we see, history can repeat itself. Ancient city in an oasis. Archaeologists have discovered the ruins of an ancient city over 4,000 years old in the Khaybar oasis in northwestern Saudi Arabia. The city, called Al-Nata, was founded around 2400 BC and consisted of about 50 houses, designed to accommodate about 500 people. The city was surrounded by a powerful wall 14.5 kilometers long, which probably protected its inhabitants from raids and harsh climate. Interestingly, Al-Nata was preserved thanks to a basalt layer that protected the ruins from destruction. The discovery was made possible by observations from above. The structure of the city walls and buildings hidden underground was visible from the air. Al-Nata became an important evidence of the transition of the region's inhabitants from a nomadic lifestyle to a settled one. Previously, scientists believed that at that time this territory was only a desert, unsuitable for life. However, finds in the necropolis, including metal axes, daggers, and agate items, indicate a high level of development of crafts and technologies. The most outstanding discovery of the year. During excavations near the German city of Retz, scientists came across a unique brooch dating back to the 7th century. This exquisite piece of gilded silver inlaid with red garnets, almandines, is considered one of the most significant finds of 2024. According to archaeologist Detlef Janssen, the brooch could have belonged to members of the elite, since such items are most often found in rich burial complexes. The luxurious Cloisonne enamel technique used to secure the precious stones formed complex geometric patterns reminiscent of intertwined snakes. The thinnest layer of gold on the base enhances the depth of the garnet's color, and the oval shape of the brooch lends it a special elegance. It is believed that the piece of jewelry dates back to the period of the Great Migration of Peoples, 3rd–6th centuries, when extensive migrations radically changed the political and cultural map of Europe. Tiara of Sitaphernes. For many years, the Louvre proudly displayed a gold tiara that allegedly belonged to the Scythian king Sitaphernes. The inscription on the artifact indicated that it was a gift to the king from the inhabitants of ancient Greek Olbia, and this looked quite credible. However, behind the shiny exterior lurked one of the most notorious hoaxes in the history of archaeology. The story began in 1894 in Odessa, when two antique dealers, the Gokman brothers, convinced the talented jeweler Israel Rukamovsky to make a tiara in the ancient Greek style for his archaeologist friend. Rukamovsky, not knowing ancient mythology, relied on illustrations from books provided to him. The resulting masterpiece, weighing half a kilogram, looked like a genuine artifact. Scenes from the Iliad, carefully engraved figures, and a solemn inscription glorifying the king. The Gokmans sold the piece to the Louvre at a profit, where they paid 200,000 francs for it. The deal was concluded, as they later joked, on April 1, 1896. However, some archaeologists, in particular Adolf Furtwängler, soon began to doubt the authenticity of the artifact. The Louvre insisted on the opposite, attributing the criticism to envy and political motives. The truth was revealed only in 1903, when Rukamovsky learned that his creation had become a museum relic. He came to Paris, personally reproduced a fragment of the tiara, and proved that it was a modern fake. The Louvre had no choice but to admit the mistake. Later, the tiara was included in the Salon of Counterfeits, and Rukamovsky himself became famous. His works became in demand, and the curiosity with the tiara became an important lesson for museums around the world. Ancient banks. The practice of lending valuables at interest dates back to ancient times, long before the advent of money. People already exchanged goods or services with the obligation to return more than was received. With the advent of a monetary economy, usury became the basis of credit transactions. One of the oldest legal documents, the Laws of Hammurabi, compiled in the 18th century BC, already contains articles regulating usury. For example, Babylonian laws limited the interest rate and prohibited collecting debts from people affected by natural disasters, which can be considered an early form of protecting the rights of borrowers. Real banks, as full-fledged credit organizations, appeared in Babylon around the 8th century BC. These institutions provided services related to storing money, lending, and currency exchange. In ancient Greece, banking functions were performed by trapezites, people who were engaged in currency exchange. However, their activities were not limited to this. They opened accounts for their clients, provided loans, and even carried out money transfers. Thus, even then, banks played an important role in the economy. In ancient times and the Middle Ages, loans with interest were often condemned and prohibited by religions. Christianity and Islam actively fought usury, considering it an immoral and unrighteous activity. Nevertheless, the need for loans always existed, and people found ways to circumvent religious prohibitions. For example, in medieval Europe, Jews, who were not subject to Christian prohibitions, often became usurers, which made them an important part of the economic system of that time. The Glozell Tablet. In 1924, clay tablets with mysterious symbols and images were discovered in the small village of Glozell in France, causing a heated debate in the scientific community. These artifacts, found by a young farmer, Emile Fradet, were so unusual that they could not be linked to any known ancient civilization. The tablets contain symbols and images reminiscent of ancient writings, but their origin and meaning remain unclear. Some researchers have hypothesized that the Glozell tablets may be evidence of a lost or unknown culture that developed in the region thousands of years ago. Another more radical theory suggests that the tablets may be traces of extraterrestrial intervention, although there is very little evidence for this. However, the authenticity of the tablets remains in question. Since their discovery, scientists have conducted numerous studies to understand whether they are real ancient artifacts or skillful forgeries. To date, none of the versions have received definitive confirmation, and the Glozell tablets continue to be one of the most mysterious archaeological finds of the 20th century. The Scariest Tribe. Traveler and blogger Daniel Pino caused quite a shock when he posted a video of the Wai tribe from Papua New Guinea. In the video, which has collected more than 17 million views, he shows an encounter with silent tribesmen guarding a sacred waterfall. The Wai people wear costumes made of mud and clay, and their masks resemble spiritual birds with long noses and menacing expressions. They protect the waterfall from strangers, and they are quite scary. However, viewers have doubted the authenticity of the video. Some commenters claim that the scariest tribe would not let a blogger so close. Others joke that their costumes look like fashionable outfits. Despite the controversy, the video has attracted tourists to the region. Travel agencies now list Wai as a tourist destination, offering guests eco-lodges and an introduction to the tribe's culture. What do you think? Is this tribe real, or is it really another way to attract naive tourists? Write your opinion in the comments under the video. Pyramid in Israel. In the Judean desert near the Dead Sea, archaeologists have stumbled upon a mysterious pyramidal structure that is about 2,200 years old. Built from massive hand-cut stones, each weighing hundreds of kilograms, the pyramid still remains a mystery to researchers. The site is located about 20 kilometers south of Masada and dates back to the Hellenistic period, when the territory of Israel was ruled by the Ptolemies and Seleucids. Already in the first week of excavations, bronze coins, weapons, papyri with Greek texts, ceramics, and even ancient furniture were found here. All this was miraculously preserved thanks to the dry climate of the desert. Scientists suggest that the structure could have been a watchtower protecting the trade route along which salt and bitumen from the Dead Sea were transported. There is another theory. Perhaps tax collectors were stationed here to check passing merchants. Later, during the Roman period, the structure may have been converted into a monumental tomb. Traces of burials indicate this, although most of the tomb was unfortunately looted. Brewing. The history of beer begins in the Neolithic period more than 11,000 years ago. It is one of the oldest drinks that accompanied humanity in the early stages of its development. Some scientists even hypothesize that people began to grow grain not for food, but to brew beer. This drink could be not just a way to quench thirst, but also played an important role in rituals and communication. Brewing is mentioned in one of the oldest literary works, the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is about 3.8 thousand years old. This text, created in Mesopotamia, shows that beer was already known and valued in society. Beer also played an important role in the legislation of that time. In the Code of Hammurabi, a collection of Babylonian laws, beer establishments are mentioned as places that were especially strictly monitored. The owner of a pub had to maintain order, and if criminals gathered in his establishment, he could be sentenced to death. The ancient Egyptians were also big beer lovers. Pyramid builders received a liter of beer every day for their work. Interestingly, high-ranking officials received as much as 5 liters per day, which emphasizes how important beer was in ancient society. How they wrote before the Romans. In the Spanish province of Leon, archaeologists have made a discovery that could change our understanding of early writing on the Iberian Peninsula. In the ancient settlement of La Peña del Castro, a spindle whorl was discovered, a small object used in weaving with an engraved inscription in the Celtiberian alphabet. The age of the artifact is about the 1st century BC. This is one of the northernmost and earliest finds of its kind. Before the arrival of the Romans, writing was practically not used in these parts, so the inscription became a real sensation. Scientists suggest that the text could have been a sign of ownership or had a symbolic meaning, for example, to show the status of the owner. Interestingly, the spindle whorl is made of local talc, which means it was made on site. It was found in a storeroom where there were also baskets of seeds, tools, and even the remains of dried meat. All this indicates a fairly developed way of life and economy. This find is important evidence that local cultures were much more complex than previously thought and had already begun to master writing. Rare giant book. Here is one of 12 giant books from the 18th century written in Spanish. Its size is impressive, almost a meter in length. These books were created for religious ceremonies and contain detailed scripts for the services. Leather binding, wooden covers, pages made of tanned animal skin. All this made the book not only durable but also a symbol of the greatness of the church. Such manuscripts were intended for use in churches where priests and choirs could read the text from afar. That is why the letters are so large. Today, this rarity is kept in the National Autonomous University of Mexico. Scientists and restorers carefully study it, trying to preserve it in its original form. These books are a real window into the past, allowing you to see what liturgical texts looked like and what the attitude to writing was in the era of colonial Latin America. Unusual artifact. The photo shows a carved model of an eye made from ivory and horn between 1800 and 1900. This object may seem mysterious at first glance, but its purpose is related to medicine and education. In the 19th century, anatomical models made from natural materials were popular among doctors and teachers, who used them to study and explain the complex structures of the human body. Such models allowed students and doctors to examine the structure of the eye and its functions in detail without resorting to real organs. Ivory and horn were used because of their durability and smooth surface, which helped craftsmen create accurate and realistic details. In addition, such objects were considered a status symbol and were used to demonstrate knowledge and experience in anatomy. In the 19th century, medicine was actively developing, and such models played an important role in education. The first of its kind fortress of the Bronze Age. In the Romanian forests of Namt County, archaeologists discovered an ancient fortress about 5,000 years old, and modern LiDAR technology helped them in this. Thanks to drones equipped with laser scanners, they were able to illuminate the dense vegetation and obtain a clear image of the structure, which had been hidden from the human eye for centuries. The fortress dates back to the transition from the Neolithic to the Bronze Age, a period when people were just beginning to build fortified settlements. LiDAR showed that it was a well-thought-out and powerful structure. Ditches hundreds of meters long, earthen ramparts, a strategically advantageous location at a height, all indicate serious knowledge and work organization among the ancient builders. Only with the help of modern technology can we truly understand the scale and structure of ancient monuments. These are not just ruins, they are traces of a complex and well-thought-out civilization that we are just beginning to rediscover. Burial of a teenager with 140 dogs. Russian archaeologists in Egypt have discovered a unique burial, which is several millennia old. During the excavation of one of the necropolises, the researchers found the burial of a teenager, and next to him 142 dogs. The boy is 9 years old. His remains lay on top of the remains of dogs. Most of them were puppies, and the approximate age of the burial is from the 1st century BC to the 1st century AD and belongs to the Roman period. Very rarely this happens when the burial of dogs is associated with human burials. If this happened, then it could be 1 or 2 dogs maximum. Once at the elite cemetery in Hierakonpolis, they found the grave of a small child with 12 dogs. But even this burial cannot be compared with 142 dogs found in one place. Dogs are believed to have played an important role in the life and faith of the ancient Egyptians. The famous gods Upuat and Anubis, who accompanied the dead to the afterlife, had dog heads. At some point in time, animals played a role as amulets and were placed under the foundations of buildings. Archaeologists also confirmed that animals were often sacrificed. It is believed that these dogs lived in some ancient kennel where they were bred en masse to be sacrificed. Scientists were able to detect traces of clay, beetle larvae, and fly pupae on the remains of dogs. This indicates that the animals after death were for some time in the open air, next to the reservoir. Perhaps the anomalous flood caused the mass death of animals and a child. A teenager in those days took care of the dogs in the kennel, and do not rule out the option that the mass grave could be associated with a magical ritual. And if you take into account the place of burial, it looks like the borders of a new cemetery. In those years, dog graves marked the border of the new cemetery. The ancient Egyptians had a lot of oddities that in our time seem vile and illogical, but we have no right to condemn them, because the framework of the reasonable and civilized throughout our history has constantly changed. What seemed normal 1,000 or 100 years ago now seems absurd. It also works the other way around. The untold riches of the Incas. The treasure of Langanides is one of the most fascinating legends of the lost riches of South America. According to legend, the Inca treasures, gold, silver, statues, and jewels, were hidden by the military leader Ruminawi in the Langanides Mountains in the east of modern-day Ecuador. This happened after the Spanish executed the Inca ruler Atahualpa in 1533, despite the fact that the Inca people had already begun to collect a ransom for him. Ruminawi, upon learning of Atahualpa's death, ordered all the collected riches to be hidden so that they would not fall into the hands of the invaders. The Spanish captured him and subjected him to cruel torture, but he never revealed the secret of the treasure's location. Since then, the treasure of Langanides has been the subject of many expeditions and searches, but none have been successful. The dense jungles, impassable mountain paths, and fogs of this region still hold the secret of the Inca gold. The legend lives on, inspiring treasure hunters from all over the world to search for the most mysterious treasure of South America.
Medieval Curse of the Devil. In Germany, archaeologists made a unique discovery during the construction of the town hall in Rostock. On the site of a former cesspool next to a 14th century house considered one of the most beautiful in northern Germany, a 15th century tablet with a curse was discovered. The text on the tablet is written in Gothic script, common from the 12th to the 17th centuries. Engraved on it are the words, Sathanas Talki Beelzebub Henrik Berith, addressed to Taleka and Henrik. These curse tablets, created from thin sheets of lead, were popular during the Greco-Roman period. They were used to appeal to God's spirits or the dead with requests to influence people or objects. This find in Rostock is especially rare because of the mention of Beelzebub, another name for the devil. Such curses could be used to break off relationships due to unhappy love, jealousy, or the desire to bring trouble to the people mentioned in the curse. Mysterious tablets. This golden tablet is one of many unique finds made by Serbian archaeologists in the ancient city of Viminacium, located in what is now Serbia. Viminacium was an important Roman city and military camp that flourished in the 1st to 4th centuries AD. However, discovered artifacts such as these tablets indicate that there were much older and more mysterious customs here. The tablets are engraved with strange symbols that do not resemble the usual Latin or Greek letters, and their meaning remains a mystery to researchers. These signs could be part of an unknown language, a code, or magical symbols that were used in religious rituals. Since the tablets are made of precious metals such as gold and silver, it can be assumed that they had a special meaning for those who created them. Perhaps they were amulets or charms that protected the owner or brought good luck. Despite all the efforts of archaeologists, it has not yet been possible to decipher the mysterious symbols, and they remain one of the greatest mysteries of Viminacium.
The harsh realities of ancient Egypt. A pair of iron shackles dating back some 2,200 years have been found during archaeological excavations at the Gotzi gold mine in ancient Egypt. These heavy shackles provide direct evidence of ancient accounts of the brutal treatment meted out to miners during the Ptolemaic era. The shackles were found in what had been an ancient warehouse. Inside were ore processing tools, pottery fragments, and 2 sets of shackles. One was made up of 7 ring locks held together by iron links, while the other was made up of 4 links and damaged hoops. Their design is strikingly similar to shackles found in the silver mines of Lorient in Greece, suggesting that technology and possibly forced labor practices were transferred from the Greek world to Egypt. Archaeologist Bérenger Redon notes that this find confirms ancient texts describing the fate of prisoners of war and criminals who were sent to hard labor. The Gotzi mine was active in the 3rd and 2nd centuries BC during the period of intensive expansion of mining operations under the Ptolemies. Residential buildings, streets, and even baths were found on its territory, but behind the facade of organized life, harsh conditions were hidden. Interestingly, archaeologists also found tablets and potsherds with records indicating that some workers were paid while others worked under strict control.
The oldest rune stone in the world. The largest number of runic stones was left behind by the Vikings in the period of 9–11 centuries. The newest stones date back to the 19th century. The discovery made by archaeologists in Norway recently broke all records. Since then, the oldest runestone is considered to be an artifact that is 2,000 years old. An inscription is carved into the flat, square, brownish sandstone, which is believed to be the earliest writing in Scandinavia. Archaeologists have already found more ancient runes, but they were not on the stones. The earliest runic find was found on a comb made of bone, which was found in Denmark. Recently, I talked about it in detail. This stone may be one of the first in history on which the ancient Norwegians and Scandinavians applied runes. And again, the same story. The find was discovered during the excavation of a grave near Turefjord, west of Oslo in 2021. But only in 2023, scientists were able to complete their research and date the rune stone. The stone was found in a cremation pit along with burnt bones and charcoal. It has been dated between 1 and 250 AD. It was previously believed that the first runes on stones could appear in 300–400 AD. There are several types of inscriptions on the stone, some of which scientists cannot read. The 8 runes on the face of the stone read Idibirug, which could be the name of a woman, a man, or a family.
Anatomical Machines by Raimondo di Sangro. In Naples, in the basement of the San Severo Chapel, there are 2 exhibits that still excite the imagination of visitors and scientists. These are the so-called anatomical machines, 2 skeletons, male and female, around which the circulatory system is carefully reproduced. Arteries, veins, and capillaries intertwine the bones, passing through the head, chest, and limbs. For centuries, there were legends that the vessels were real and the skeletons were the remains of people sacrificed for the sake of science. Allegedly, the anatomist Giuseppe Salerno, on the instructions of Prince Raimondo di Sangro, during his lifetime injected his servants with a special substance that caused the blood to petrify and keep the vessels in perfect condition. In fact, everything is a little more prosaic. The vessels are made of wax, wire, and silk, but with such precision that even modern experts do not exclude that experiments were conducted on living people before the creation of the machines. Prince Raimondo was an extraordinary person. An alchemist, inventor, and experimenter, he created fireworks that resembled architectural landscapes, counterfeited jewelry, and allegedly invented an eternal flame that burned for 3 months. At one time, next to the female skeleton, there was a third one, the skeleton of a fetus connected to the placenta. But in the 1990s, it was stolen. Nevertheless, the anatomical machines still amaze and frighten, and this apparently was their purpose. Board games. The love of board games in mankind arose thousands of years ago. These games appeared before many civilizations and accompanied people for thousands of years. The most ancient game, according to archaeologists, was dice games. Cubes found during excavations and dating back more than 5,000 years are almost indistinguishable from modern ones. This confirms that the passion for the game existed in prehistoric times. One of the most ancient games with a board and chips is the Egyptian game of Senet, which arose around 3,500 BC. According to legend, it was invented by the god of wisdom Thoth to lift the curse of the goddess of the sky nut imposed by the god of the moon Khonsu. Senet was not just entertainment, but also a game with a sacred meaning, symbolizing the struggle between good and evil, as well as the path of the soul to the afterlife. In the East, one of the most ancient games is considered to be Go. the history of which begins around 2000 BC. This strategy game, still popular today, symbolized wisdom and concentration. Backgammon, on the other hand, probably originated in ancient Iran and appeared about 5,000 years ago, although the rules were not documented until Byzantium in the 5th century AD. The Romans also loved board games and played them in taverns where they ate and had fun. Often game boards were carved directly into the tables. Although gambling was prohibited on the streets, it was freely played indoors. Archaeologists have also found cheating dice with a weight inside, which indicates attempts at cheating even in ancient times. Memorial marks on the bricks of history. The Mehrangarh Fort in Jodhpur is one of the most majestic structures in India, but its beauty hides dark pages of history. On the inner gate of Lohapole, 15 imprints of women's hands are still visible, silent witnesses to the tragic tradition of sati. Sati is an ancient Hindu ritual according to which widows were supposed to burn on the funeral pyre of their husbands. Sometimes women did this voluntarily, but more often they were forced. This practice was officially banned by the British in 1829, but in India it continued until the 20th century. In 1843, after the death of Maharaja Man Singh, his wives left handprints on the wall before stepping into the fire. However, this is not the only case in the history of the fort. In 1731, 6 wives and 58 concubines of Maharaja Ajit Singh also committed suicide in the flames. Tragedies have been going on since the fort's foundation. In the 15th century, Saint Chidyawale Baba cursed Rao Yoda, saying his land would suffer from perpetual drought. To lift the curse, the king ordered a resident of Megwal, Rajaram, to be walled up alive within the fort's walls. But the curse still seems to be in effect. Maharajas have died here, tourists have fallen, and in 2008, hundreds were killed or injured during a stampede at the Chamunda Devi temple. The youngest archaeologist. During a routine family outing in Tel Azekah, Israel, 3-year-old Zeev Nitzan accidentally made an archaeological discovery. She found an ancient scarab, some 3,800 years old. This place is known as the site of the biblical battle between David and Goliath, and the find immediately attracted the attention of the Israel Antiquities Authority, which confirmed the authenticity and uniqueness of the artifact. It turned out that this was not just a pebble, but an ancient seal in the form of a scarab, a symbol of renewal and rebirth in Egyptian culture, which the Canaanites used as an amulet or seal. According to researchers, the scarab is associated with the Canaanite civilization, a people who inhabited the lands of the Levant in the Bronze Age. Such objects reflected the belief, status, and close cultural ties of Canaan with Egypt. Golden coffee pot. It would seem that this is an ordinary coffee pot, but its decoration makes us think. This strange object was given to the mayor of Pembina, North Dakota around 1900. The surface of the coffee pot is covered with various objects, from shotgun shells and dice to pocket watches, seashells, and military buttons. All this is collected together and covered with a thick layer of gold paint, which gives the object an eccentric and mysterious look. Who could have created such an unusual object and why? There is no answer, and perhaps it will never be known. This coffee pot may be a unique work of art or an attempt to create a memorable object filled with various symbols and stories. It feels the spirit of the times and the eccentricity of the creator who decided to immortalize everything that was at hand on one surface. Mysterious accessory from the future. Archaeologists have discovered wall carvings depicting objects similar to modern handbags. Some of these images are about 12,000 years old. The earliest were found in Turkey in the ruins of the megalithic temple of Göbekli Tepe, where strange images are engraved on the columns of the ancient temple. Similar motifs have been discovered in Mexico, Iraq, and South America, raising many questions about the possible use of such objects by ancient civilizations. Although the images resemble handbags or clutches, experts believe the ancient ruins are more likely to depict baskets. Some believe that the concept of a handbag may have been invented by ancient civilizations. The first modern bag appeared in 1841 in England, created by Samuel Parkinson. The problem is that the Göbekli Tepe temple was built in 9000 BC, and its builders could hardly have known about such an accessory. Another ancient example of a handbag was found in ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs written about 5,000 years ago, where the gods hold a small square object symbolizing prosperity. Archaeologists have indeed found remains of baskets and tool bags used by the ancient Egyptians, but they cannot yet say for sure what is depicted in the hieroglyphs. Similar discoveries were made in Iraq, among the ruins of an Assyrian palace built between 883 and 859 BC, which depicts a genie with wings holding what appears to be a handbag. Historian David Miano believes that these figures, called Apkallu, were minor deities who carried water buckets made from sacred date palms rather than purses. Ancient buckets similar to the engravings were actually found in Iraq. Similar motifs have also been found in Mexico among Toltec ruins, where giant statues hold objects resembling handbags. These statues were created around 750 AD. Is a 700-year-old alchemist alive? The name of Nicolas Flamel has long been surrounded by an aura of mystery and legend. He was born in the 1330s in Pontoise, not far from Paris. Having lost his parents early, he got a job as a scribe in the capital thanks to his good education and quickly succeeded. His offices with copyists brought in a stable income, and his customers were from among wealthy citizens. The real mystery began in 1357 when Flamel acquired an ancient manuscript from a traveling merchant, the Book of the Sage Abraham, written in Aramaic. To decipher it, he went to Spain, where, according to legend, he learned the secret of the Philosopher's Stone, a substance that turns metals into gold and grants immortality. In 1368, Flamel married the wealthy widow Purnell, which made him even richer. Together, the couple actively donated to churches, hospitals, and the needy. After Purnell's death in 1402, Nicholas's generosity only increased. He remained surprisingly vigorous even in his old age, which gave rise to rumors. Flamel really had created the elixir of eternal life. Flamel died in 1418, but rumors about him faking his death did not subside. He was allegedly seen in India, the Ottoman Empire, and later in Paris in the catacombs. They said that he and Purnell were alive, hiding and continuing to practice alchemy. Skeptics claimed that the story was a 17th century invention and the Book of Hieroglyphic Figures was the work of London publishers. But interest in Flamel only grew. In the 19th century, a man pretended to be him, offering the secret of immortality for 300,000 francs. And his tombstone was found in a Parisian shop where it was used as a cutting board. Today, the tombstone is kept in the Cluny Museum, and Flamel's house on Montmorency Street is the oldest residential building in Paris. After Harry Potter, interest in Flamel flared up with renewed vigor. What if he really is alive, just in no hurry to remind us of himself?
German 12th century amulet. In Germany, on the territory of the old town in Mainz, in 2008, archaeologists found an ancient pendant that is more than 800 years old. An amulet was found in a medieval garbage pit. For more than 15 years, scientists have been trying to understand what is inside. The pendant could not be opened without damaging it. Therefore, researchers have been trying for many years to find a way to look inside. As a result, they used a high-tech method of neutron tomography and found bone fragments, a piece of silk thread, and a piece of beeswax inside. The phallal was dated to the end of the 12th century. It is made of copper and decorated with images of Jesus, Mary, 4 apostles, and 4 female saints. Archaeologists have determined the similarity of this amulet with 3 others found in Germany and believe that they were produced in the same workshop in Lower Saxony in the city of Hildesheim. If you only knew how much time archaeologists spend on the restoration of ancient artifacts. In the case of this pendant, it took specialists more than 500 hours of time before using neutron tomography. They literally bit by bit removed traces of corrosion and dirt from the surface of the pendant. Historians believe that the pendant is a phylactery, an amulet that protects the wearer from evil spirits, and inside such objects are usually the relics of saints. Phylacteries were very popular in the Middle Ages. They were worn around the neck on a silk cord. Scientists promised to identify who owned the bone fragments found inside. Usually in such amulets, there was a strip of parchment on which the name of the saint was written. In our case, the note was not found. Therefore, researchers will have more work to do.
History of Port Arthur Prison. About an hour-and-a-half drive from the capital of Tasmania, Hobart, is one of the darkest places in the history of Australia, the Port Arthur Penal Settlement. From 1830 to 1877, the most dangerous criminals of the British Empire were held here. After Great Britain lost the ability to send prisoners to the United States, the choice fell on distant Australian lands. Initially, Port Arthur was just a logging station, but soon it turned into a full-fledged complex with 60 buildings, including prisons, churches, punishment cells, and even well-kept gardens, laid out by the hands of the convicts themselves. More than 12,500 people suffered here. The conditions were harsh. Underground cells, isolation in complete darkness and silence, hard physical labor. All this broke the will and left deep marks on the psyche. One of the most terrible stories is the murder of Joseph Shuttleworth in the prison church. He was hacked to death by another prisoner while he was working. The motive remains unknown, and on the Isle of the Dead, where prisoners were buried, one of the convicts allegedly encountered the devil himself. Since the prison closed, stories of ghosts have been appearing here. From the sounds of footsteps and children's laughter to the ghosts of women and soldiers, Port Arthur is considered one of the most unclean places in Australia. Today it is an open-air museum and a UNESCO heritage site. But even on a sunny day, there is something disturbing here: the memory of those who spent their last days within these walls. I would be glad if you left a kind comment under the video and shared this video with your friends, and I strongly recommend you watch the previous video about alien finds by archaeologists, which unfairly received little attention. Thanks for watching. Bye everyone.